Hi everyone, I'm Cassie. I'm a writer and a spiritual coach. I've been feeling called to make a video on this topic because moving forward from sexual violence has been such a big part of my own journey. It's been a big part of developing my emotional and bodily awareness, as well as my spiritual awakening. And with everything that's going on with the Epstein files and seeing these abuses of power, I see so many parallels to what I have experienced at an individual level and what I know so many other survivors have experienced. So I really see this moment as there's this kind of exposure, this awareness that people in power are abusers. And for us as individuals who have been through this, we've seen this play out in our families, in our churches, in our communities. So this feels really familiar for me. I think for some survivors, some people are really triggered right now. I don't necessarily feel that way. I really feel for the people who are affected by it, but it doesn't feel surprising or shocking to me whatsoever. Because, on some level, it is about the specific people who are perpetrators and the specific people who are victims or survivors. And it is kind of about specific acts of violence that happened. But there's also deeper layers to this because it's not just about the abuse itself. It's also about this entire network of people who allowed it to happen, people who enabled, people who turned a blind eye, people who didn't want to make it their problem. Some of us have, a church leader who said, that youth pastor, what he did was really messed up, but we got to talk about it. We'll put him in a different district. It won't happen again. That uncle that you have, he's just kind of creepy. You just need to stay away from him. That'll be handled within the family. That'll be handled within the church. We don't need to go to the authorities. It'll work itself out. Guess what happens? It doesn't work itself out. A best case scenario is basically it gets swept under the rug and doesn't happen again. That's basically a best case scenario for that kind of situation. Because there's this kind of math that perpetrators do with, like, in this situation happening to these people in these other circumstances, they feel like they're very likely to get away with it. This happened in my own life. My father thought, with these things going on with my spouse, with this child, in this sort of situation, with this position in the church, I probably won't get in trouble. And you know what? He was right. And most sex offenders are right when they do this. According to a RAINN statistic, 98% of sexual predators face no legal consequences for what they do. None whatsoever. So that means for 1,000 abusers, 20 of them will face jail time or some sort of actual legal consequence for their actions. And the other 980 of them are just walking around out there. And that might feel like a shocking statistic. It kind of is. A lot of us, myself included, have had to hold that truth for a long time. I've had to hold that truth for many, many years. And I've had to find ways to feel safe in our world with that being true. And part of my perspective here is that this almost exposes like deeper layers of truth. And again, this is felt in abusive family systems. And here I'm kind of making the argument that the systems of power and our governments are an abusive system. And this other layer that's present here is that in these abusive systems, rules and laws basically operate in one direction only. They are largely about control, and they are not so much about protection. They might sometimes, some of them, serve the function of protection, but I don't think that's what they are primarily there for. I don't think that certain kinds of laws exist to protect most people. I think they're there to protect people in power and control most people. So an abusive parent doesn't say, My child has to do this thing, and I will hold myself to that same standard. An abusive parent says, my child has to do this thing, and I will hold myself to no standard whatsoever. And anyone who even dares point out that dichotomy or injustice, they will get punished for even mentioning that that is true or asking why that is true. And this is kind of why abusers from the Epstein files, in the US at least, aren't facing any real consequences. This isn't some sort of bug in the system. I actually think this is a very integral part of its design. And I also feel like we can't talk about this sort of sexual violence without discussing how this is a very real consequence of a society that is built on patriarchy, that is built on white supremacy, that is built on Christian supremacy. In the US, our nation is built on the genocide of First Nations and the transatlantic slave trade. And sexual violence was used as a tool for oppression, control in both of those. We can't, I don't think we can talk about sexual violence without talking about actually the legacy of sexual violence in US history. It was used to terrorize Indigenous women in particular, and it's still used in that way. It's still used in our carceral system to control and humiliate Black women, to control and humiliate trans people. This isn't new. For some people, your awareness of it might be new, but this has actually happened throughout the course of our history. And I've had to own this difficult truth about my family. My father's a pedophile. I have an uncle who's a pedophile. Both of my parents were sexually abused when they were kids. I don't know the history beyond that, but I'm sure it goes back farther than that. I've had to feel and own that painful truth that that is part of my lineage, that is part of where I come from. I've had to face this legacy of patriarchy, white supremacy, religious indoctrination, sexual repression in my own family. The process of these things coming to light is really difficult, really painful. I see that difficult, painful, messy, uncomfortable things. I see those happening in people's responses to the Epstein files. I see people going through the 5 stages of grief about this. I don't know if those people know. Certainly, all of those people don't know that they're going through that. But I see that happening. And as painful as that process is, it is really necessary because before we can move forward or even know what next steps we might want to take, we have to accept that truth that is present right now. And that is painful and it can take time. I see this as important. I see it as necessary. I don't want us to skip over that moment. We are going through this reckoning of what does this mean for our country? What does this mean for how we view political systems, how we view huge positions of power, global leadership like the president? How do we view these things? What does this mean for us moving forward? We may not know yet. We're figuring it out. We need that time and that space to process, to recalibrate our understanding of what this means for us, our communities, our countries, our world. This is an important process. Again, please, I don't want us to skip over that. My heart really goes out to the victims and the survivors that are directly impacted by this. I know how painful of a process that can be. I don't know exactly how that's unfolding for them, but I know it's painful, it's hard, it's vulnerable. And for people who are also struggling to accept this and navigate what it means for them, I really feel for you too. If you're struggling with this for any reason, please seek out support. Please talk to people about it. Please get professional help if you need it. I mentioned a RAIN statistic earlier. They're a great organization to go to if you aren't sure where to begin and need more support. If you want to follow people who talk about being a survivor sort of in a professional way, I can't recommend Tarana Burke's work enough. For those who aren't familiar, she's a co-founder of the Me Too movement. She also wrote a really beautiful memoir called Unbound. Highly recommend. And if you take nothing else from this video, please know that if you're a survivor or if you're just struggling with this, you are not alone. Unfortunately, myself and many other people have been through the same shitty experience. So yeah, please take really good care of yourself today. Take some time to make space for your feelings. Take some time to connect with your body, to figure out what's going on in your body today. Please, again, I'll say this for like the third time. Please remember you are not alone. Thanks so much for watching.